I am also really grateful to have the opportunity to have met our next honoree, Chairman and CEO of Starwood Capital Group, Barry Sternlicht. Barry has made tremendous contributions to the worlds of real estate and hospitality through innovation and vision. His Baccarat Hotel project marks the entry of the 250-year-old brand into the luxury hospitality arena. And his environmentally conscious One Hotels brand is changing industry standards from no paper or plastic in the guest rooms to nature as art. An admired philanthropist, Barry serves on the board of the Robin Hood Foundation, a pioneer in venture philanthropy. His charitable interests also include advancing scientific research for type 1 diabetes, education reform, and tackling the various gender, economic, and social barriers that young people face. Advocating for girls and women really takes everyone, including men. We need more men like Barry who understand that a commitment to gender equality strengthens communities, economies, and society at large. As former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan famously said, "No tool for development is more effective than the empowerment of women." Barry, please join me on stage to accept your award for inspiring women and girls to be innovative and fearless in pursuing and achieving our goals at the highest level.
Thanks for being here today. I speak a lot in public, but I've rarely followed the woman who should have been President of the United States. And I think Sean's speech may be the best speech I've ever heard as an acceptance award. So I'm very grateful to be here. Karina, you're an inspiration, and I have 3 kids. I have a daughter. She's as fierce and as determined as you, and she's living that dream of also giving back now that she's graduated her college, which wasn't Columbia, but was Brown. So where I went to school. The bastion of liberal arts. When Suna Saeed, who isn't here, asked me to do this, I was wondering exactly why. I guess because I've never thought of a woman as being anything but equal to a guy. And I'll say that I'm going to go back to quickly my youth. I mean, my father was a survivor of the war in Europe. And, you know, my worst day would have been better than his best day. And as a child, I thought about that because any adversity I faced, I mean, growing up in 9 years old when the war broke out and almost 16 when it ended, and living your life scared of coming out of caves and fighting with the partisans against the Germans, he made me tough. And he married a very strong woman, who was my mom. And my mom was, her parents were Russian, but she was born here. She was educated. She went to Columbia, I guess Barnard, I think is correct. She got a master's in biology and became a school teacher. And then her 3 boys, my 2 brothers and myself, we went off to school. My mom got a job teaching. After teaching, she got a job as a stockbroker. It's amusing because my mom, that's the last thing, I don't think she really knew what 1 and 1 were equal to. And she was a little hard of hearing, which is a really tough profession for a stockbroker. So I'd say, buy IBM, and she'd say, GM? I said, no, IBM. But she persevered, and my father, who was an engineer, and he came here after the war, when he met her, he ultimately had a couple small companies. Actually, I worked at one of them. I worked on the assembly line with women, and my job was to save the bulb of a flashlight. They were disposable flashlights, so I'd take the defective ones and have to save the 13-cent bulb. That was my job. And, but my dad's business failed. And I was just entering college, and I knew how proud and how heartbroken he was. He quit his job, or the job didn't exist anymore because the company went under, and he joined my mother as a stock man. I guess she was a stockbroker, he was a stock man. She had the big office, he had the little office. And he never, he couldn't get her to retire. So I don't even know how old she was when she was 38 for 40 years. My mom, I never knew how old she was. She never wanted to tell us. I still think she's 38. She's 83 today, and she's still gunning and going. And I went to see her the other day. I was in Florida. I drove up to North Palm Beach, where she has a home, and I drove an hour and a half, and I knocked on the door, and she wasn't there. I'm like, Mom, where are you? Oh, I'm out. She was at some show, and she was out with friends, and I'm like, oh, I'll just leave this little gift for you and go back to my place in Miami, an hour and a half away. So she stood me up, my mother. When I was CEO of Starwood Hotels, it was a company I started back in 1995. About 3 years later, I won the Diversity CEO Leadership Award. And to me, women and women organizations, it's just smart business to appeal to a bigger consumer set than the male population, right? I tell my daughter, and I'm inspired by my mom. My mom is amazing. She's social, she's gracious, she's charming, she's funny. She lives life every day like it's her first day. And I say that, for all of you, when I was in business school, I did go to Harvard after my liberal arts education, and I had a professor who said that be careful where you set your goals in life because you may achieve them. And I think for all the women and men who face hardship in their lives, I think I took that I didn't exactly know when he said that, what that meant. But you think about it, you set your goals here, you're going to achieve them here. If you set them here, you might actually, maybe you don't make it, but you'll do better. In my career, I've kept going because of that. It's like, never thought I couldn't do it. Takes a lot of hard work, takes dedication, takes getting up 8 times when you're knocked down 7 times. And the other thing I think that was really important to me was the Chinese fortune cookie that I got when I was like 14. And I opened it up, and it said, "Perseverance is genius in disguise." And I use that today all the time. I tell it to all the people I work with. And that if you stick with it, and if you really desire it, it will happen. And one last thing about this organization, which I think is really important. I chaired Robin Hood in New York. I've been on the board about 14 times, the largest poverty, 14 years. It's the largest poverty-fighting organization in the country. We have a budget of almost $120 million, all donated every year to give to 200 charities around New York. And one of our hallmarks is the flow through, the fact that every dollar given by donors goes right out the door to fight poverty across New York. And this organization is equally good with your money and with your gifts. And it's very important that when you give your philanthropic dollars, which you work so hard, you care about, that the end user, it goes to the people you want to help. And here, empowering women who have difficult times. You heard Karina's story, how it changed her life, getting a full scholarship to Columbia, and now she's giving back. It's the best part of our country. So thank you for having me today. I'm also surrounded by wonderful women, executives from my hotel company over here, my 23-year assistant, who's been with me longer than my children have been alive, and all of my great design talent. And we have a great firm in One Hotels, which is opened here in New York on 58th and 6th, and in Brooklyn, just opened on the water. Go see it, it's amazing. If you want to stay, that's okay too. But 65% of our guests are women, actually, because women care about the environment, and they, unlike some fellow in Washington at the moment. I didn't say that, did I? And we care about the environment, and we want to leave the world a better place than it was when we got it. And it's one world, we're responsible for each other. That's where the name came from. So thank you so much for having me today.